Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Chronically Ill Diaries podcast. On this episode today, we have on a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Dr. Anthony Hector. We also have Franz on the podcast, my husband, today to kind of help ask more questions and just kind of be my little co-host for this episode. We unpack so much in this episode. Anthony is a new chiropractor, but it goes so much deeper than just chiropractor and the practice of that. We dive into mental health, physical health, so many different things that you wouldn't even think we would be talking about having a chiropractor on this episode. So make sure you stay tuned, you grab a snack. This is, like I said, a very long, chatty episode, but I think it is one of the best episodes that we have filmed this season, and I'm super excited for you guys to listen. So let's get started. So I kind of wanted to make the theme and the title of it to be we don't have a healthcare system, we have a sick care system.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're going to go off of. So Anthony and I met 9 years ago at InShape. We were both working as trainers.
At a health club?
Yes, at a health
A
club.
health club, right.
Yes. So what kind of made you want to leave, like just solely the training aspect of health and move on to what you're doing now? If you could also explain what it is that you do now as
Sure.
well.
Yeah. Well, I'm a chiropractor. I went to school. I graduated this last December, and I started a job in at the end of April down here in San Diego. I'm from Turlock and Modesto. My wife and my daughter still live in Turlock, actually. Yeah, shout out to the Central Valley, right? Hot
Of
Central
course.
Valley. But I was a trainer for 5 years, and I had one client in specifically that actually altered my mindset of what I was doing in the gym. We made some huge improvements. She was a single mom and just going through so much emotionally, but then she fell off a ladder and hurt her elbow. She dislocated it. And so she didn't require surgery or anything like that, but they did put her in a cast. They left the cast on for too long and too much scar tissue built up. And the problem was the cast was at about a 45-degree angle. And so her elbow was stuck like this because after 6 months, the lack of movement, the body was just stuck in this position. And so she came into the gym before she had fallen off of the ladder. She was already my client, but she said, "Can you help me with this? Like, I don't know what to do." They said that like I could go in for surgery, but I don't want to go in for surgery. And so I started doing some research and talking to my chiropractor up in California, in Northern California. And he said, just start going through some functional training exercises that will help increase the mobility of that elbow and just push her as far as she can go as far as pain wise, because it was going to take a lot of work to build or work through that scar tissue. Long story short, we did a bunch of different functional exercises, and one thing I didn't like actually is just that I had to keep going back and like doing more and more research about the elbow, about the anatomy in that area, right? I know about the bicep, the tricep, because I was a trainer and I knew how to work out those muscle groups. But the intricate details of the elbow, I started doing a lot more research, and I realized we're going through and we're fixing this for her, but there's a lot more that can be affected by the fact that this one joint is locked. So she was starting to have problems up into her neck and into her hands. And we realized she was, the way she was sleeping, the way she was sitting, the way she was standing was altered because of this stuck elbow. And I couldn't help her with everything that she had going on. She was already going to a chiropractor also, so she had a really good relationship with her chiropractor. But um, I realized I was talking to my chiropractor one night, and he said, "Why don't you go to chiropractic school? Like, I can see that you want to help her, and you've helped her a lot." I'll back up really quick, actually. 6 months after her elbow injury,
Mhm.
she got the cast taken off, right? about 2.5, maybe 3 months into our functional exercises, her elbow went from like this to like this. It wasn't quite 100% straight, but we had broken through so much scar tissue. And she was super thankful. She was getting back the function of her arm, basically. And again, single mom, just having so much to do. And I realized that I can only help people in the gym so much. And there was limitations, not in the gym, but in here. I didn't have the knowledge that I wanted to have to help people more than I was already helping them out. And so that's when I had the conversation with my chiropractor, and he said, "Why don't you go to school, man? Go get your license and see where this passion that you have of helping people takes you." And so 5.5 years later, because I had some prerequisites to get done before I could get into chiropractic school, 5.5 years later, we are in San Diego at a thriving office by Balboa Park. It's a beautiful office, beautiful location. And my passion to help people is just growing even more every single day. Every single day that I see new people, that I see, these existing patients that are just making so much progress. It's like fuel to my fire, honestly, of just helping one life at a time change the sick care system that really we have in our society.
So amazing. I feel like I remember the person you're talking about. I just remember you talking about her a lot, and how like much you wanted to help her, but you didn't know if you could, type of thing.
Yeah.
So going off of that, what do you typically do like in a normal day with a client? Because all I know about chiropractors is you go in for like what, a 40-minute session and they like pop you where it hurts.
Yeah.
So typically, well, that's what I know about it, right?
Sure. No, sure.
And I feel like a lot of people just think that, which is why there's like this controversy with chiropractors. It's like, oh, it's fake, it doesn't really work, they're messing up your body, whatever. So how do you incorporate that into your quick hour, 40-minute session with a client of yours in a day?
So the way that chiropractic works, chiropractors are doctors of the nervous system, and that um, we move bones, and that's the art of chiropractic. We're changing the orientation of a bone in the spine to remove the interference of a nerve that's coming out of that spinal segment, okay? And that nerve is traveling out to various parts of the body. Every function in the body is controlled by the nervous system. And really, I think the biggest misconception is that doctors of chiropractic are just there to provide relief from like back pain, neck pain, even, whatever pain, joint pain that you're having. You come in, you get cracked, and then you're out the door, right? Our process in our office is very systematic and very specific. And so when a patient comes in, and they usually come in with some sort of ailment. It's neck pain, back pain, headaches, whatever it is, right? And so their nervous system is altered and the function of the nervous system is altered. And so we have to do a very thorough exam. And so we do a very thorough 1 day, 2 day process where we don't adjust the first visit. We do history intake. We take x-rays so we can see what the spine actually looks like and to identify any sort of abnormalities in the joints and in the alignment of the joints, and just to remove any sort of pathology possibilities. So I mean, sometimes you find cancer on X-rays. Not necessarily, we're not necessarily diagnosing people, but we know what a normal, let's say, X-ray of the neck should look like, and if there's abnormal tissue there, or if there's abnormalities in any sort of way that is beyond our scope of practice, we refer out to other doctors to that specialize, in something that could be going on. I can't cure cancer, an adjustment's not going to cure cancer. But if I find cancer in someone's neck, or if I find something that's looking a little bit weird and I refer them out, it's crazy, the things that you find on people's x-rays. And without taking x-rays, it would be kind of like sailing blindly. You just don't know where you're going, right? You can crack anybody's bones, but you need a lot of guidance and direction, and those x-rays really help point you in the right direction. And so after those first 2 days, when a patient starts care with us, we actually have them on a 36 visit care plan that can take, anywhere between 3 to 4, maybe even 5 months, depending on the patient's needs. But that corrective phase of care is a lot of frequency throughout the week. So we see patients anywhere between 2 to 3 times a week. The adjustment actually only takes about 3 to 5 minutes. We're not with them 45 minutes or 60 minutes. That's a lot of time. And so we use a very scientifically backed technique. I actually don't even crack any bones with my hands. I use a device called an integrator. It's a spring-loaded device that applies the adjustment, and it's very specific and um, and very effective. Specific and effective, and that's kind of what we want our office to be viewed as. We're specific and we're effective, and you come in, you get adjusted, and then you're out the door and you get back to your life. And that's really how the process like should be in my viewpoint, it's saving people time and energy and money to do it the way that we do it. And so everybody has their own way, but that process looks very similar with every patient. Our systems don't change. It's just the patient that's in front of us that changes. You could have one person can have 5 different issues. And I had a patient come in last week. He only had one thing that was going on with his body, but our process doesn't really change because um, the patient's symptomology cannot affect the way that we apply our care. And I think often it can be common where doctors of chiropractic tend to want to just get people to sign on. And I I want to be careful how I word this because, I don't want to, ruffle any feathers, but it's really something that I'm passionate about because I think that if you're focused on your office's numbers and your patient count, you're not focused on the right thing. You need to be focused on your patients and you need to be giving them what's best. And so we don't alter what we give, it's consistent across the board. But we find that our systems are very effective in 3 to 4 months, just giving people great relief, which is fantastic, but also a lot of structural change, which is then altering how their nervous system works. And that is the key right there. We're trying to just remove as much interference of the nervous system as possible to help them be as healthy as possible.
Dang, sounds like you guys have the blueprint.
It's pretty cool, man. It's just so systematic and I'm very task oriented. And when I go through, I'm like, this is like I'm in a candy shop. I'm a kid in a candy shop, just loving life right now because I like systems, I like processes. And so once I came on, I had, a 120-day training program where I was just like learning something new every single week and then applying it the very next week. And then we're back at it. And so being, I don't know, several months in now, everything's coming together. And when I see a patient, it's just me one-on-one with them, just seeing how we can, help their lives improve, which is super cool.
Dang. I was going to ask you about the whole beginning process, but you already answered it with
Mhm.
this process about like, grabbing the x-rays and stuff like that. So when you get the initial x-rays, you can probably immediately see, what it is that needs correction.
Yes. So what we do, we take static x-rays, so just a front view and a lateral view of the neck, for example. And so we see the front of the bones and then the side of the bones, right? But we also do a motion study in the x-rays. So we have somebody bend their head forward and we have them bend their head backwards. And we do an analysis of those motion x-rays and compare them to the neutral alignment. The bones should all be moving at a certain point to a certain degree, moving forward and backwards. And so when we go through and analyze the x-rays, we find what are called subluxations, which is a bone out of place or a bone that is stuck, right? And some people can come in with 7 subluxations in their neck. That means that there's 7 sections of their neck and 7 joints in their neck that aren't moving properly. that's a subluxation. That there's a nerve coming out of it. That at the end of the day, a subluxation is just showing us, hey, in this part of the neck, this nerve is going to be affected. And they come in, like I have hand, pain, I have numbness, I have tingling. My arm's kind of been hot. It's just like, I have hot flashes in my hand, basically, right? That's an indicator that something's going on up here because the nerves all start here and they come down into the arm, right? So
Mhm.
those motion study x-rays are are key, in my opinion, in identifying exactly where the root problem is for that patient. So again, getting back to being super specific, right?
Do you have them continue getting X-rays throughout the, you know,
So yeah, it's a good question actually. Let's see. At the end of the corrective phase, it could be about 90 to 120 days. We take x-rays again and then we compare. And at that point, their number of subluxations, the number of bones that are stuck in their neck should have come down. And I say should have, they they almost always have a reduction in the number of subluxations in their neck, which means they have more proper function and movement in the neck.
yeah, and since you guys do have that, blueprint that you guys follow, the times that maybe those subluxations are still there, do you think it could be just their lifestyle? Maybe they're sleeping wrong, maybe they're putting, stress on their body.
You were asking amazing questions because yes, that is it, that's very true. We say in our appointment and in that initial consultation, this is going to be a 50-50 relationship. You're going to come in, you're going to get adjusted, and we're going to do our part. We give them homework throughout those visits, week by week. We give them additional exercises, stretches. We have what we call a roll, which is like a hard foam pillow that they lay on to start correcting the curvature in their neck. We're seeing a lot of straight necks, and there should be a curve in the neck. And if there's curve, I know you start to analyze yourself, right? Like, do I have a curve? And it's crazy. We are seeing such crazy, yeah, and I'd have to take an x-ray, right? Like I can just look at your neck and say, oh, maybe, but I'd have to take an x-ray, right? But yeah, we give them a lot of homework, honestly, and those people who are diligent and dedicated to making those lifestyle changes tend to see the best results, as you would expect. And so it's rare to have both parties be doing what they need to be doing and not see results. Then we start to think, okay, what else is going on here that we're missing? What part of the equation did we not factor in? And so then it becomes a a process where we start to identify other variables that could be affecting the patient that we aren't aware of.
Yeah. What are you not telling me here?
Yeah, well, and honestly, yeah. So I had a patient come in. She was doing amazing, and she'd been 2.5 months into care. And then one of her symptoms before she started care was headaches. And all of a sudden her headaches came back. And I was like, what is going on? So we had a little chat, and turns out that she had started some hormonal therapy that we weren't aware of 2 weeks before the headaches came on. And the medication that she was on, one of the side effects was headaches. So out of nowhere, she was becoming frustrated and, just discouraged. And we just had to have a conversation. She's human. We're human. Every human being is infallible. And so it's just one of those things where, like, we could have made a mistake. We didn't make a mistake. She could have made a mistake. She didn't make a mistake. It was just she added something new to her lifestyle that completely altered the biomechanics and the biology of her body. And now we're getting these symptoms where the body's saying, I don't like this. And so yeah, every once in a while you get things 3 months into care that would have been really nice to know 3 months ago. And so, but it's just education. Some people just don't think that um then I don't think people understand the scope of practice when it comes to chiropractic, and so they leave out a lot of things just naturally. And there's nothing, inherently wrong. They're not doing anything inherently wrong by keeping that from us or anything like that. But they don't think it's relevant.
So people that are on maybe a lot of medications or whatever, do you guys go into researching and understanding like
what it is they're on, and maybe they have some type of illness or whatever. Do you guys go that deep into like understanding their personal history and all?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. We ask what medications they're on because we want to know everything about their body. We want to know how it's all functioning. And so we do a lot of collaborations with MDs, physical therapists, because we want to know if a patient has a bunion, gout, if they have, if they're on depression medication, we want to know all of that information. It helps us create it helps us along the story of this patient, right? And so if we have a patient that comes in with depression and they're on medication for depression, or they tell us they're on the medication, but they don't tell us that they actually have depression. I ask, hey, why are you on this medication? What's going on here? You went to your doctor, and then they say, well, I've had depression for, 3 years now. Well, tell me a little bit about why you think that you have, these depressive, episodes. I broke up with my wife, and so I'm a single dad, and so that might not seem important, but it really actually is important because that depression it's a psychological, physiological effect on the body, right? The medication, I looked it up, and this is a real story here. The medication that this patient was on has over 25 different side effects. One of them being anxiety, increased anxiety. Another one is seizures, elevated high blood pressure. And so I started giving these different side effects, and I asked him, did they go over these side effects with you and the possibility of you maybe experiencing elevated anxiety levels? And he said, wait, why would I be on medication for my depression that could give me anxiety? And so then he kind of sat there and was starting to like question, not question the doctor's decision, but question why he's on this medication, right? And so then he said, do you think that my depression is a byproduct of something that's going on physically? And I said, it's possible, the nerves that regulate your emotions and your moods could have been interfered with in the neck. And so then he started looking at his x-rays, and he kept asking me a bunch of different questions to fill in the blanks on his end, right? I have all this information about what's going on. He doesn't. All he knows is that he has depression and he's on medication for depression, and the doctor says he's going to have to be on this medication for the rest of his life. So he has the possibility of experiencing, over 25 different side effects being on medication that's helping him with one problem in his life. And I said, do you think that there might be a better way of going about tackling this depression? And he sat there and he said, I never thought about that. And to me, I look at it and I think there's probably different ways you could, tackle depression. You can start doing some, self, or you can start doing meditation. You can start figuring out how you can help regulate your nervous system a little bit to calm you down a little bit. And then he started asking a bunch of cool questions, and he left just like overwhelmed by all the information that I gave him. And the appointment was only like 30 minutes. He just had asked so many good questions, and he realized that being on medication isn't the only option. And that's even if he actually didn't end up coming on and signing on as a patient because of financial reasons. He's a single dad, and that's kind of sad in that sense. I left kind of just feeling like, damn, I wish I could help him. And it's just like, and so I'm playing around with different options because we want to be able to help as many people as possible, but we also have bills. We have, our families that we have to provide for. We can't just give care out for free, and that's just a fact of life. But I told him, we are here for you still. We are still a resource. I don't want you to just think that you come in for an appointment, you don't, come on as a patient, you walk out that door and you cease to exist to me. To a certain extent, I have to move on, right? Like as a business, you have to move on to the next person because you have to provide for your families, you have to provide for your staff in the office, you have to keep the lights on, right? And the idea of one and done, you come in and you're out the door, that's the last thing I want people to feel when they come into our office. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What was it that that guy came in for?
Neck pain, neck and left shoulder pain. He came in with actually his left shoulder was bothering him, and then he realized going through the questionnaire that he did have this neck pain that he had been experiencing off and on for like 3 years, but it wasn't consistent enough for him to realize that, oh yeah, I do kind of have pain 10 out of 14 days. We asked him out of the last 14 days, how many days have you experienced this pain? And he said, wait, 10 days. Actually, he added it all up in his head. And so he realized that there's more times during the week that he experiences pain than he doesn't. So the depression wasn't even something that he even thought would be relevant about, or even related to chiropractic care at all about. So kind of an interesting little case, but we see cases like that all the time where they come in for one thing and they realize the body is all, we help educate people in understanding that your body's all interconnected, And so it's not sectioned off. If you have shoulder pain, it's not just like, oh, there's something wrong with the shoulder. I should just get surgery. I should get shots in my shoulder, or I should, start taking muscle relaxers, or I should stretch this joint out or this shoulder out more.
It's typically what doctors try to sell is like, oh,
Right.
there's something wrong over here. We need to deal with this little part of your body. And yeah, but one thing I do appreciate about you is we're kind of the same and we don't really like to take medication unless absolutely necessary.
100%.
And like for me, it's very hard to take my handful of pills every day, but
Yeah.
I have, like, obviously I have to now. Um,
Right.
but in the past, that was something that I would, if I would have known more, maybe it could have been different. Maybe, like, hopefully we can get to this at some point, but how you spoke about the types of stress that can affect the body, I feel like honestly, looking back, the main reason I'm in my position today is because of stress I put on my body in like physical, emotional, mental, like all these different ways I put stress on my body to like end up where I am. And it
Right.
could have been avoided. And I feel like moving forward, people that were in my position a couple, like 5 years ago, if they know about something like this, where it's more of, they're more conscious of their mental state, which can lead to a better physical state, could just better their lives in general. Because a lot of people that have like an illness, they're fucking stressed out. Like you're not just living a good life. Like you're depressed, you're anxious, you are stressed about money, you're stressed about so many things and you feel like shit most of the time. And it's I'm a big into like the chronically ill community. I see all the men and women that are so like basically crippled in the sense of they just feel like shit 24/7. They don't know how to get out of it. They try to eat well, but it doesn't help. They feel like they can't really move the way they want to move anymore. But I feel like there has to be something, right, that gets them from the person they used to be to someone that can still live their life even though they have this illness or whatever. Like it's not going to go away, but they can fix it. And hearing the things that you're saying, this feels like maybe not 100% of a solution, but something that can definitely help get them a little bit closer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and so I wrote this down, and maybe this is a good segue into talking a little bit more about the different types of stress and how people deal with the stress. Because I talk about in that talk that I sent you, I talk about different avenues that people take in dealing with stress because we all deal with stress, right? And I talk about this in the talk, and it's really important. Stress is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just really when it becomes a bad thing is when the body's not able to adapt to the stress properly. And when the body isn't able to adapt to the stress, then we start to see different kinds of symptoms. And it's interesting how an emotional or a mental stressor can manifest itself in a physical manner.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is when you take on a lot of stress, you could get nauseous because you're overwhelmed, right? I used to get really sick in my stomach when I got overwhelmed mentally and emotionally, and I couldn't eat. And it was a physical reaction or manifestation of the stress that was in my system. And sometimes that can be headaches, it could be low back pain, that could be shoulder and neck pain, that could be an inability to sleep well. And so if you toss and turn a lot when you're sleeping, you start to look at things like, why am I not able to recover? And why do I sleep 10 hours and I wake up and I'm even more tired than the night before? It doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. And so you start to wonder, you start to ask these questions, or you should start to ask these questions of what's really going on? Because when you take medication for like if you have sleep apnea, if you're not able to fall asleep really easily and you start to take melatonin, for example, melatonin helps you go to sleep. Obviously, that's just the chemical reaction that your body's going to have to that medication, right? Well, the body then stops producing melatonin, which it naturally produces, and so then you're having to be on this medication to go to sleep instead of being on this normal cycle your body should be on, right? And so I wrote this down, which is kind of interesting. I kind of paraphrase it a little bit, but drugs maintain disease, manage symptoms. They, and that's just the whole thing. Drugs maintain disease and manage symptoms. They're the medications that people are taking for these headaches, for cramps, for joint pain, for different diseases that are out there. It's not actually curing the disease itself. It's not curing the root issue or finding the root issue of the actual problem that's in their body, right? And so really what I want people to walk away with is understanding that if there is a problem, there has to be a solution. There isn't just one solution, there's multiple solutions, but what is the most effective solution that's going to be able to give you the best possible health outcome on the other end of going through that solution, right? Medication does give you some solution, and it's a solution for relief. Medication doesn't necessarily address what the root issue, and so I think that what I really focus on that talk is stress is going to be a normal part of every single person's life. If you don't have stress in your life, please contact me. I would love to know how you don't have any stress in your life because I want to know what the trick is, right? But the key is, how is your body able to adapt to that stress and still function properly? And you have to have healthy avenues and healthy ways of dealing with stress, because if you don't, it's going to catch up to you eventually and you'll crash and burn. I've seen it over and over again where you just crash and burn because you're overwhelmed and you can only medicate and over the counter medicate so long before your body's just like, I'm done. I'm done. And now we start to see different, diseases and different ailments in people that could have been, like to your point, could have been prevented by maybe changing your lifestyle a little bit, right? Changing some things in your diet, changing some things in your environment, in how the toxic load that you're allowing your body to absorb. And so really getting to the root issue is what I would say makes chiropractic so unique. I don't want to just take your pain away. I tell this to people. I said this on Friday. I don't mean this in a mean way at all. I don't care how you feel. I care more about how you are functioning. How you feel is not the best indicator of if you're healthy or not, because you could be feeling really good, right? But you could be just not functioning well at all. And oftentimes the three leading causes of death in the United States, cancer, heart disease, and there was one more, I'm trying to think of it. These, the three main causes of death in the United States don't actually have symptoms until it's a little bit too late. You go in for a routine checkup and you realize, oh shoot, I have cancer. I didn't even realize that I had cancer. There's a mass there. And then you start to go through tests and the docs say, yeah, you probably have like six to 12 months to live. And you're like, but I felt fine. Like I didn't even realize there was anything wrong. Feeling good or feeling bad is not an indicator of whether you're healthy or not. And that's super important, you know? And so, how you feel can be deceiving. And really, you have to start to analyze if your body's functioning properly, And so oftentimes I think that people feel good, but in reality, they're masking a lot of symptoms and a lot of issues that they're just not really thinking are a big problem. And medication starts to play a role in relieving some of that pain, relieving the symptoms, and not really getting to an actually healthy state, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I could see this being so confusing too for not just the patient, but even for the chiropractor as well, because to your point, you can't base it off of the feeling, right?
Mhm.
And when you look at your patient down the road after a few sessions, the main question that you probably ask is, okay, how are you feeling?
Right, right. It is one of the questions that we do ask, how are you feeling? How are you functioning? Or are you able to play with your kids more? It's crazy, it's it's bringing awareness though. And to your point, it can be confusing. That's what we have to have an objective analysis. I'm human and I do care about the person in front of me, but at the end of the day, I have to use an objective analysis and an objective system to really evaluate if progress is being made. And that's why we take x-rays and we do, various different diagnostic scans in our office to really figure out how their bodies are functioning. And of course, obviously, I do care about how the patients, feel. I want them to be feeling good, but we can't base progress simply on how somebody feels of that. Like, there's a
Showed up
distinction.
today. You showed up today, bro.
Ah, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, hey, I had a question, another one, and then I'll give it to Jane. But this whole conversation is making me realize something. You guys met at the gym. You guys were, doing your training stuff, and that makes me think that sort of work was a lot of preventative sort of stuff that you would, take on with each client. Like, here's an exercise you can do to prevent this or that from
Wait,
happening.
can I interrupt you there?
Yeah.
I will have to say, a lot of trainers, especially at commercial gyms, did not even think about that. It wasn't about, oh, you have this, that's why you're coming to a trainer because you can't like lift stuff. It was more about, a lot of the trainers were more about like, let's just do this workout. Like I feel from what I saw and still moving forward now, like trainers just kind of do the workouts that worked for them versus really, really like caring about the client in a different way to kind of like learn,
Yeah.
like what he's also doing. But sorry, go on.
I see that. No, I see that. I feel like,
Yeah, I think to your point, Jen, really quick, that I think there was a mixture of people who were, you know, I think they had their lane that they traveled down, right? And they brought their clients along with them. And the client almost had to kind of adapt their lifestyle to the way that the trainer trained, if that makes sense. And then you had kind of you had other, at least at the last gym that I worked at, there were some trainers where they were more functional based. And so it was more about, let's get you functioning well and your muscles and your body in general just functioning well versus, hey, let's you up and make you really yeah. So I think there's a mixture for sure. And so who's to say which one is more prevalent, but for sure I think Franz makes a good point in the sense of there's only so much within the scope of training that you can do to help somebody out.
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Where I was going with that was, in your previous line of work, training people, I call that more preventative, but then now
Sure.
you're taking on a role that's more responsive, reactive, right?
I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
So with your connections at the gym, right, when you were a trainer, it sounds to me like you did a shit ton of research. Um, you had connections with your chiropractor and stuff like that. Or just a super resourceful dude. Do you have the same sort of thing now where you have the connections maybe in the gym, right? Because with your background and everything like that.
Yeah. So right now, it's kind of interesting you asked that. We just partnered up with Crunch Fitness down here in San Diego.
Ooh.
And we're doing screenings at the local gym here near, it's about 10 minutes from our office. And we're trying to create that relationship, right? Where we bring awareness to that world. Now it's kind of reversed, right? I was bringing, more chiropractic knowledge into the gym, but now because I was in the gym, now I'm outside of the gym and I want to continue to do that from the scope from the chiropractic end of things, right? And so the connections we're going to be doing talks at the gym, and the first talk that I'm going to do actually is going to be with the trainers to help educate them a little bit more about chiropractic and help educate them in the sense of if you have I'm basically going to be providing the service that I really needed when I was a trainer. I want to give them more knowledge and more information and partner up with them so that they can better be equipped, so they can be better equipped with helping their clients. It doesn't even necessarily mean that I want their clients or even them to come to my office. That's not the point. The point is if you have knowledge, knowledge should be shared. I think it's hugely responsible if you have knowledge and you don't share knowledge with people, because that is really the greatest resource. What someone does with that knowledge, the potential is unlimited, really, because they can touch so many different lives. And if I touch, a group of 6 trainers at Crunch Fitness and I give them a message and they can walk away with 2, 3 different tools that they can now add, to their training, and they can maybe alter their training a little bit, maybe change what they're doing a little bit and help an additional person change their lifestyle and, to your point, become more proactive than, reactive, because the state of our society, the health of our society is more, we don't do anything until we have to do something. Well, if you take control of your own health, you start to do something before it becomes a problem or before there's even a problem that you need to address, because wouldn't you want to feel healthier longer? And instead of feeling like crap and then going through surges of health, oh, I feel like crap, I'm going to do this to fix it. Okay. And now I'm going to wait for the next thing to come up and I'm going to start changing my life. Well, no, why don't you be proactive and, change some things in your day in day out that are going to go a really long way to keep you healthier for whatever reason, to play golf better, to be a better lover, even to be a better brother, sister, mother, father, whatever it is. And that's really, you know to the original point that you were asking about, that's really what the connection with that Crunch Fitness is more about, right? It's to expand their knowledge base and to expand our reach in our community, because I don't want our community reach to just be the 4 walls that we're operating in. And, somebody gives us a referral. No, why don't we be proactive on our end too, like you said, and go out and start helping and spread the news that we have, the knowledge that we have, because if we can do that, you know, we can start changing the community and the overall trajectory of everybody's health in our own community, right?
Love that, dude.
Yeah. It's just been a lot of, those last few months have been a lot of work, and it's been a lot of groundwork for this launching pad to change the San Diego, healthcare system. I want it to be a healthcare system. I don't want it, I don't want it to be a sick care system. I'm really just tired of, I'm sad and I'm mad that people don't have more tools that they can use, because medication is not the only solution out there, or even living with pain is not the only way that they have to live. If they can do a few things and learn a few things from us and change their lifestyle a little bit, they can change the trajectory of their health style, of their health, and they can change the trajectory of their kids' health, their brother, their sister, their mom, their dad.
I feel like it's very controversial because many people are like you and I who think that medication doesn't have to be the answer to all these bad things in our lives. But a lot of people who maybe have gone a little bit further down the rabbit hole of not being healthy most of their life, and now they need the medication to be able to function. And they can argue that this medication makes it possible for me to move again, like if they have arthritis, for example, and blah 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 blah. I truly feel like since I got into fitness at such a young age, like I think I was 15 going on 16 when I started really taking eating at like the whole aspect of it very seriously, that when I did get diagnosed with arthritis and all that, I rarely ever have complications with my joints. Like, yes, it does happen. I feel it. I hurt sometimes, but it's never to the point where I see others that have the same exact condition as me and they can't even move and
Yeah.
they can't leave their house because of how bad they feel. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I just maybe I'll take a Tylenol today because I can't really move my wrist that well. But I feel like just taking that step to be more aware of my overall health and kind of what I'm putting into my body, but also living my life and just being more active has definitely helped me in the long run. And I also feel like there's a lot more growing that I can do as well. I'm not gonna lie, lately I haven't really been good about either, but I still feel that health in general is what's making me a lot in a better place than I would have been today.
Absolutely. And I think the key is you have a good baseline. And if your baseline is really good, when you do stray off of that baseline, you're able to bounce back to that baseline really quickly and really effectively, right? And I think that's really key right there. What people's baseline is right now in general, if you take the general population, it's pretty far off where it should be health-wise.
Hey guys, we're actually going to end this podcast right here as part 1. I feel like we went over so many incredible things and we really got to know Anthony and a little bit more into the chiropractor field. And I feel like I learned a lot, Franz learned a lot. We had so many takeaways. Make sure to check back next Wednesday for part 2 because our conversation was so full of so many different ideas and topics that I really wanted to kind of end it there on what part 2 is kind of going to be about, which is us kind of going into overall health and tying everything back together. Thank you again for watching, and thank you again, Anthony, for being on the podcast, and Franz as well. Like I said, make sure to check back on next Wednesday for part 2 of this podcast. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.